so often we lock ourselves up in believing we need to be in the situation we need to be right now. I'm here to tell you right now, if you're looking at this camera right now, if you're watching this video right now, what are you doing? Is that yesterday is so important, because yesterday is still 24 hours, guys. It takes you 24 hours. It takes you really a second to change your life. It takes the second that you were thinking a different way to the second you think a different way. It changes overall. Welcome, my name is Titus Rhodes, and this is Young Clarity, a podcast about thinking differently no matter how old or young you are. Whether it's creativity, self-improvement, or even your faith, we talk about it all. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 9 of the Young Clarity podcast. I'm your host, Titus Rhodes, and today, welcome back, guys. Welcome back to episode 9 of the podcast. I'm excited to talk to all of you guys. I'm very excited to talk about this episode. I'm very excited to be in community back with you guys. It's been a minute since we've last spoken. It's been a minute since we've really last spoken. And because it's been so long since I've been back on this podcast to talk to you guys, at least for me, because it's been 2 weeks for me because I've been gone on vacation. All those episodes, you guys enjoyed the story time, the feedback on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram was awesome. It's been really, really great to see the growth in the community that we're slowly building. And I'm so happy to be back. And I have a lot more energy. I'm happy. I really needed the vacay. And now we're back on it, and we're here to talk about topic today is progression. And what a change. It's amazing that we're on episode 9. And I want to talk about this because I really want to dive in today because I'm very excited to be here with you guys. Okay, so episode 9 is about progression. Episode 9 is about progression. The episode you're listening right now is what? It's about progression. So we're talking about progression. And I've been thinking about it all weeks, these last couple weeks, because I've been thinking about the change of where I was and the change of who I am today. And I think that everyone here is very interested in themselves. Am I correct? Am I correct that everyone here is interested in themselves? And I'm talking to you guys like an audience because I'm really, really thinking about how you guys, I'm kind of teaching you guys, and I want to go into that in the future because even now talking about progression, I have so much planned in the future that I've been doing behind the scenes to make this podcast better, to make us better, to grow, to change, to evolve. And I think that today is a big pivotal moment in this podcast career because it's talking about change of today and change of where you were and change of the future. And I think the change of the future is the most impactful thing we can be talking about right now. So as I was saying, I think everyone in this room right now, if you're listening to this podcast, whether you're on YouTube, you're on Spotify, whether you're on Apple Music, all the things that you listen to podcasts to, I think you're very interested in yourself. And I have a question for you. I have a question. I said, what are you doing to make yourself so interested in you? If that makes sense. Now, when I say that, it's kind of odd because I say, what are you doing to make yourself interested in you? It's like, well, I'm just being myself. I wake up in the morning, I walk and I look in the mirror, I do all these things. I work on myself. I mean, I care about myself. Why would I not care about myself? But I said, are you not excited for the future of yourself? You know, one thing I've always struggled with for a long time in my life is anxiety. And anxiety has always been this like almost this box that I've encapsulated my life in my very early life because I had such a big fear of who I was going to become. And I really need to focus on who I was right now to be the best I can be when I'm in the future and who I'm going to become, which is a whole different mindset shift. And it requires that. And I want to break that down for you guys when you're doing that in your life and you're in your box where you're trying to figure out who you're going to be. Why don't you focus instead on who you are right now instead of focusing of who you're going to become? Because if you focus on who you are right now, when you become that person, you'll be the person you want to be naturally because you started focusing on who you want to be naturally today. That's where it all starts. That's what progression is about. Progression is not rather looking and seeing in the future of ideas that can help us in the future, but it's more so looking at the futures and steps we can make today to make the future better for tomorrow. And Tomorrowland is a great movie. If you remember Tomorrowland is a movie where basically they went to this whole different world. It was basically like the scientific part of tomorrow, and these kids would go on an adventure on it. And throughout the movie, throughout Tomorrowland, throughout really, and we're going to be pivoting between Tomorrowland. I'm thinking of Mr. Robinson, not Mr. Robinson. I'm thinking of the Robinson family, like that movie about those guys who that kid. It was an animated movie. I'm thinking about Back to the Future. I'm thinking about all these movies where we were progressing and how we see the future in the future. I think Back to the Future was 2012, but 2012 does not look like that at all. In fact, it was very funny because it was 2012 and everybody was making a joke about Back to the Future, about what the future looks like. Or it wasn't 2012. I think it was 2015. It was some moment in the future that was very like they had flying cars, they had all these things, that made it look like it was a bigger deal than it was, but the reality it really wasn't. And that is funny to me because like I feel so often that's what our life is like. We look so far 10, 5, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1 years ago in the future. We look so far in all these years in the future that we almost create a mythical place of where we think we're supposed to be, but in reality, we're nowhere near that. And it's just like for us when we're trying to look at our own future and we're back in the past and wherever the heck he was. And we're flying in the future into our DeLorean and we're looking and trying to see what we are going to be. We so often make this imaginary situation of where we're supposed to be. But I'm here to tell you is that you have to be patient in the moments when you feel like in your life you're supposed to be somewhere else. Because I guarantee you right now, the moment in the present moment that you are in right now is so great and such a great opportunity because it is the opportunity for you to realize and be grateful for where you are and where you've been. Okay, I'm telling you is that 5 years from now, there's no such thing as overnight success. There's 10 years of silence. And then tomorrow night, something crazy happens. There's no such thing as overnight success. It's the same way with our life, but so often when we're progressing and we're trying to figure out who we're going to be and how we're going to be in the future, we imagine these mixed scenarios in ourselves that ruin our self-esteem, that cause anxiety, that cause depression because we think about our past, that cause all these things, when in reality, all we need to do is focus on today for tomorrow to be better. I'll make an example. Last week, I did a podcast and it was about, you guys saw the story time of my theater, like thing about how I got my first musical, which is a very great story for me because as an artist, it reminds me of where I came from, who I was, and what it took for me to be here and why I belong. All these things came into play when I was telling that story because that's what it was for me. It was telling me where I belonged. And I'm here to tell you is that you're going to have a moment just like that. But that was an overnight success. That took weeks and weeks in the making just to do all of that stuff that I was telling you about. And even then, it was sheer kind of, I would say, luck. One thing I have to say is I was reading a book. If you haven't picked this book up, you need to pick up this book. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. I finished that book yesterday. The Richest Man in Babylon is a very interesting book because to me, it's well, not to me, it's about a book about creating wealth and making all this stuff about Babylon. And in one of the chapters, it says this, and that's this chapter about the goddess of luck. Now, if you don't know what the goddess of luck is, it's just talking about the idea that there's a woman who blesses people with luck, and it only comes to men who are really worthy. Now, luck doesn't come from gambling. The book pushes that. Luck does not come from gambling. For them, it was the gambling tables. For them, it was the poker tables. For them, it was all these slot machines in our life. I just came back from vacation, and there was a huge casino. And even then, luck didn't come from them. Everybody, first off, when I go into a casino, I want to let you know right now, I look down on everyone in there. It is so sad. Casinos are so sad for me because I don't gamble. So when I see casinos and people playing at casinos, I just feel bad for them because they're really believing they're going to actually walk out of there with something. And a lot of it's not even fun after a while. It's just addiction. And it's very sad and tragic. You could naturally just look because you're just like, man, that guy just lost $600. That was a guy I knew who lost $600 at a gambling thing. I was like, dude, you're insane. But that's what gambling is. And The Richest Man in Babylon continues in the book. It talks about that luck doesn't come from the gambling tables. Luck actually comes, and I want to make this great key moment right here, write it down. Luck comes from opportunity. The man who chases opportunity and puts himself in the position of starting today and taking action of his opportunities will get blessed by the goddess of luck. So I'm here to tell you is that just how I was saying progression, how you're trying to focus on the 10 years from now, why don't you focus on today, take action, and maybe you'll get a little bit lucky in the future. These are messages I've learned from reading. And I want to say is that so often we lock ourselves up in believing we need to be in the situation we need to be right now. But I'm here to tell you right now, if you're looking at this camera right now, if you're watching this video right now, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? Are you doing the thing that you want to do 10 years from now? Are you doing the thing you want to do tomorrow? Are you doing the thing you want to do next year? If no, drop it. Do the thing you want to do next year. Do the thing you want to do tomorrow. Do the thing you want to be doing 10 years from now. Because life is way too short and life has too many opportunities it throws at you for you to sit on your phone and to act like you are progressing. In reality, you are procrastinating. And the richest man in Babylon warns of the man who procrastinates and doesn't take opportunity. For the man who doesn't procrastinate will never get meet by the lady of luck. And I'm here to tell you that because that is the message of which we need to focus on. Kanye West had this amazing thing. Kanye West had this amazing I love this excerpt of him. And a lot of people, he's a pretty tricky person to talk about because a lot of people don't like Kanye. But Kanye said that, he said, we should have future classes, not history classes, but future classes. Now, I do respect the importance of history, but I also think that history in itself is kind of hard because history in itself can definitely, I'll take this for example. I was in a history class and the guy had a thing on the board and it was talking about racism. And he says, it was like two questions on there. It was like A or B. And the class had to raise their hand and guess whether or not this was the right answer or not the right answer for them. This is what the class thinks collectively, all 21 of us. So I'm in the class, right? It's a question about racism. It's basically like the first A question on there, the first choice of the question of that, will we solve racism, was no, America will never solve it. And then B was there will be a solution. Everybody raised their hand. The majority of people actually said A. And it was very odd because they were like, there's no way to cure racism. Now, I hate this. I hate this idea because this idea kind of stems in your mind that there's no solutions to problems. So I raised my hand and asked the teacher, I said, teacher, why is for the answer B, is there the word, there will be a solution? And he was like, what do you mean? I said, I don't think it's too far out of reach. I don't think it's too far out of reach for to solve racism. And and people can look at me and say, oh, I hope you're right. He said that to me. And think I'm like naive or pessimistic or dumb or whatever. But I'm here to tell you is that I'm not naive or pessimistic or dumb or unaware. As a black man in America, I think I understand exactly the state of racism just by living in my day to day. But I want to say right now is that the fact is that we can solve our problems if we start eliminating the will and I'm going to do it tomorrow, and I'm going to do this next year. I'm a bit better, and all these excuses we throw at each other. If we just eliminate the will from our lives and start saying we can make action today, and there is a solution. The solution today to solve racism is stop being racist today. And if that's a hard concept for you to wrap your mind around, maybe when you get a little bit older, you'll understand it. But I'm trying to tell you is that I don't think that it's hard for us to change as a people overall. I think it's just hard for us to realize we have the change in our hands. And that's why the future class is so important, because maybe the future class could be a class about telling people how to be better by just saying, hey, why don't we start doing something that we wanted to do today and work our way up to there and then watch the progression of how we change overall. I was thinking about this podcast and I was looking at my TikTok comments because I always look at my TikTok comments. And I was thinking to myself about TikTok and I was like, TikTok is so amazing, so cool, so innovative, so awesome, packed and amazing. It has a lot of features and I'm meeting a lot of people and it's giving me a great reach for my podcast. A guy wrote in there and he said, why don't you back up? Now, if you've ever seen my podcast, I'm always very close to the camera. I'm very aware. I edit all my podcast clips for everything. I'm very aware of all the editing flaws. I send them. I just do it because I need to post. I post every single day. So it's very hard for me because when I'm bulk posting, it's hard for me just to focus because when I'm editing, I'm not editing a podcast at a time or a clip at a time. I'm editing bulk of it, like a majority of it. So I'll edit 14 clips in one sitting and then post those 14 clips every single day. I am not in the position where I'm very proud of this podcast as of right now. And I'll say that in a sense that I'm a perfectionist and I enjoy things to be a little bit better. And everything you have ever told me or criticized about this podcast, I am very aware I need to fix and change. Now, what am I doing to fix that? Because I just said, hey, I need to take action today. I just moved the angle to take action today. I'm going to edit this a little bit differently to change action today. I'm going to listen to the crowd to change action today. But I would very much prefer this. I would prefer if somebody watched my podcast from episode 1 and then skipped all the way to episode 10, which is next week's episode, and tell me the difference between episode 1 and episode 10. Now, episode 1 didn't even have video. Episode 10 has video. I want someone to look at my episode 2 and skip to my episode 11. I want somebody to take a 10 episode difference of where I was right now. And I would prefer if you never watched this podcast, but you took the time to watch the podcast episode 10, episode 20, and episode 30 and watch as we grow over time. One thing I noticed about Joe Rogan is that when I watch his old clips or his old things on his podcast, Joe Rogan, it's really came up. Dude's been doing it since the very beginning, but you can see the progression of moments and the things he did to change himself and put him in the trajectory he is today as the number one podcast in the world. That's the same way you should look at this. Change the way you look at your life. I think everybody should take a progress pic. In fact, I believe I was reading in the book. It was something I believe it was Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was saying this in his book. He said, take the time to take a picture because a picture is so important, and take time to remember that. I believe it was unchangeable. And the idea is basically this, is that a picture takes a second, but it can last a lifetime. It takes a second to do it, a second to remember, a second to ask somebody, a little bit of awkwardness. But overall, having pictures and videos are way more important than not having them. Because ultimately, you want to look back and see where you were in the past. And the purpose of history, the purpose of all that stuff is to look at the past so we don't repeat it. But also the purpose of history is to realize how far we've come so we can know that, hey, we can calm down. I remember being in English class one time. English class, and I was thinking to myself, and we were talking about the concept of America. This was high school. So kids, naturally, we don't know a lot about the country. We don't really know a lot. We only know so much far. We weren't alive during September, the September events in 2001. We weren't alive during these moments. We weren't alive during these pivotal moments in history. So our guests were born right after. So I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about history and how we were talking about history. And America's not even been around for a long time if you really think about it. America, compared to, let's look at England, or we look at Rome, or Rome fell, or look at all these places that changed that had these 500-year legacies. We don't have a lot of name in the game. I think America's only been around for what, like 1700s, it's 2024. What is that, 300 years? We're not 200 years or something. It's like we haven't been in the country for a long time. And I said this point, I said America sometimes because America's a young nation, sometimes we have tantrums. And tantrums are moments when things fall. Tantrums are things when people freak out. Tantrums are when we're so angry at each other that we want to hurt each other. Tantrums are what make us and define us as a nation, but we're young. But we have to realize that those tantrums can possibly bring us together because America's stronger. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that sometimes we have our moments of weakness, but overall, I see us coming together as a nation. And I am patriotic in the sense that I look around and I see how we're Americans and I see that we're a collective, and I think we should move towards that. That's what I believe. So if you don't believe in that, or you don't think all that stuff, or you just say, hey, you hate the country, then you can leave, because I'm totally agree with you. I've been around the world. I know what it's like. But I'm here to tell you is that stop trying to look at the moments that we are right now and kind of look positive into the future. Now, I was watching a video from Patrick Bet-David. Patrick Bet-David, if you don't know who Patrick Bet-David is, Patrick Bet-David is a podcaster. He's a very influential person. He's done a lot of things. He's an immigrant. He's changed a lot of stuff. And he said this amazing quote that I wrote down in my journal I want to share with you. He talks about the timeline of change. Now, if you don't know what the timeline of change is, the timeline of change is basically like a list of different days and times of which are pivotal moments in our change and how we change as people. And I believe that with progress picks and the idea of keeping count and keeping memory of where we were yesterday, we can be better tomorrow. So here's the timeline of change. Number one, timeline of change would be 21 days. 21 days is a glimpse of change, all right? You're just going to get a glimpse of it. 2, 90 days. That's a noticeable change. 3, 12 months, that'd be a satisfactory change. You'll see a lot. Okay, if you ever worked out before, you have a 21-day pick, you have a 90-day pick, you have a 12-month pick 1 year from now, 1 year later. 3 years, big change. 3 years is a big change. You can change a lot in 3 years. Okay, think about it like this. 3 years, kind of close to 4 years. It's moving on to, like, let's say you start freshman year of high school, you're a senior now. 5 years of change. Okay, you're a freshman in high school, now you're a freshman in college. 5 years is a huge change. You change a lot in that time. A lot of events happen, a lot of months happen, the last seconds go by. 10 years is massive change. And lastly, he talks about 20 years. Now, 20 years is generational change. I think about my mom. My mom and my dad have a business, and they run a business, and they've been doing it for almost 20 years now. And originally, where they came from and how they grew up and their upbringing, they didn't have the opportunities, and it's almost statistically impossible for them to be where they are today. And they've been doing this business for about 20 years, and they probably changed the generation of who I am today and made me. And I am a product of that generational change that they overcame. Now, the message that I'm trying to say is that when you look at the timeline of change and you change overall, and you look at this line of 21, 90, 12, 3, 5, 10, 20, you look at your life in the timeline of that. You break down your goals in the timeline of that. You take advantages and opportunities of a timeline of that. I guarantee you'll be better than you are yesterday. But I tell you is that yesterday is so important because yesterday is still 24 hours, guys. It takes you 24 hours. It takes you really a second to change your life. It takes the second that you were thinking a different way to the second you think a different way. It changes overall. So what is it progression? What is all this stuff? What is all this meaning? What are we going to do in the future, Taz? What's the plan for this podcast? What's all this happening? What's all these things that I'm talking about? Why am I rambling? Why am I so hyped? Why am I so excited to talk about this? Why am I talking to you about this? I'm talking to you about this because I believe that we started this podcast, and this is episode 9 of the podcast. If you look at the way I was talking then and you look at the way I'm talking now, I talk completely differently. I've become a better speaker. I've grown, and I'm noticing that. And I'm not trying to put and toot my own horn here, although I am. And I lied to you because I am tooting my own horn because I'm killing it right now. I believe is that we can be better 90 days from now, which is our next goal. And when we're 3, 5, 10, 20, when we're all these goals and we're all these things and we're all 12 months and 1 year later, we look back and say, happy anniversary. I'm here to tell you is that I want to see you change as well with me. Now, every week I come to you every Monday. Every Monday I post at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. Every single Monday, this podcast. That's the date I chose. I want to let you know that every Monday morning you wake up, I want to see you be a little bit different. And maybe instead of looking around and trying to compare yourself like the losers do, where they look around and say, am I following the status quo? Am I being funny enough? Am I running enough? Am I looking great enough? Am I in great shape? Am I doing all this like losers do? Because that's what you are if you're comparing yourself. You're a loser. I want to let you know that you're a loser if you're comparing yourself because you're not winning and being you. You're looking at somebody else and losing to them. I'm here to tell you is that you can stop being a loser today if you just pick up your saddle and get on the horse and start running forward. It doesn't change a lot. And we all have moments where we lose. You know, one of my favorite songs ever is Everybody Plays the Fool. I listened to that song so many times. And I grew up listening to it a lot back in St. Louis. And I look at that song so many times. And I think to myself that everybody plays the fools. Everyone's going to be a loser. I've been a loser before. I've compared myself before. And sometimes being a loser is the first step to being a winner. Not even sometimes. It's the moment that you realize you need to progress and change. Now, what is the progression of change? It's the realization of changing. It's the taking the action to change. And it's the active of the process. Okay, it's going to take you a lot of effort to be different than you were. It's going to take a lot of hard work. But hey, you can do it because you're a big kid. You made it all the way up to now. You made it to this far. You picked up the podcast. You listened to one of the best podcasts that's ever coming out. You listened to some underground podcasts in the middle of a kid's room. You've listened to this. You're making an active step to change. You're doing great. Now, here's what you need to do now. You need to go ahead, turn this off after you get done listening to it all the way, and go do something that you didn't want to do. And do that every single day until you became so good at it that everybody looks at you and says you're awesome. That's how you get a six-pack, by the way. It's crunching your abs and doing it so many times that when somebody looks at you, they're like, how the heck did you get a six-pack? You're like, man, I worked every single day for this. And now I have it. Now, for all the guys who have a six-pack just from metabolism, screw you. I don't want to, screw you. I'm tired of all this effortless stuff you're talking about. But that might not be your goal. So effort and patience. If you lack patience and urgency or effort, you won't witness changes. If you lack the patience to wait, if you lack the effort to try to put the work in, and if you lack the urgency to choose every single day to be better than you were yesterday, just a little bit faster, you won't see change. Because it takes the patience of a snail to see something big, and it takes the effort of a man to work hard, and it takes the urgency of a wise person to realize that today is not promised. And I said today, tomorrow is not promised. So here is the message today. Grind, work, progress. Grind, work, progress. Grind, work, progress. We are going to do a lot of great things in the future. We're going to get some guests. I've been talking about it forever. But it's hard to get guests when you have to record this every single week. I really should bulk record these episodes, really. But all this is coming together to say that progression is the first step to changing and being better. I'm so excited and thankful that all of you guys are listening to this podcast. You know, I love the idea of progression. I love the idea of taking change. I love the idea of doing all this stuff. And I'm going to work my butt off. Until we get to a place that I am proud to say, hey, this is my podcast. Would you like to listen? And to all the people who are watching on TikTok, on YouTube, on Instagram, thank you. For all the people who are listening, thank you. For all the people who are caring enough to even take the time to take the moments out their day, the precious seconds they have, they can never get back, to listen to me right now, thank you. I want to thank you. I want to praise you. You're doing an awesome job. You're working hard. You're doing the best. You're the best version of who you are right now. But I think you could just be a little bit better. Maybe can you try it for me? Thank you for trying it for me. Have a great day, guys. If it's a great Monday, go ahead, go get some coffee today, go back to the gym, go do some grinding stuff, go do some things that you want to do tomorrow. You know, the Bible talks about this awesome passage of looking at scripture, and Jesus has moments where we see him change. You know, it took Jesus 30 years to do the thing he needed to do to change everything. And he changed so much in those 30 years and changed so many lives within that. Now, there's a goal and there's the end goal, but please do not take the end goal and be locked in your end goal to where you think that you can make a little bit more noticeable, practical steps to helping other people at the end of your life. Okay? What I mean by that is that do not be selfish in your progression of the fact that you are going to focus only on you, because a selfish person is a stupid person. For a selfish person does not realize that everything he does for his life is for others. So take the moment to look at the beginning of your life right now and the end of your life right now. And when you're making your steps to progress and change yourself, think about how you can change other people's life. Whether that's donating to your church, whether that's helping someone in need, whether that's giving someone food when they're hungry and you're a little bit hungrier, but you're going to give it to them anyway because you realize that the bigger man has to feed the people around him, not eat it all for himself. I'm here to tell you is that there's moments in your life right now where you have progressing moments that have to be ticked off. And you need to look at every single box of your life. Write down every single box of what you can do better. It's going to be a long list, so get a lot of paper. And try to knock off half of those lists, half of those boxes by the end of your life. Get a lot of paper and write down every goal you have and plan it out. Think about it. Strategize. Think. Use your brain. God's given you a brain. You have a brain. You're listening right now. It's probably not that great, but hey, work with what you got. Take it. Check it off and go and grow. That's all you have to do. So progression is a lot of things, and it's a heavy mixed bag. And if you want to hear more about this idea or this progressing idea of what we need to do, you can always ask me in the comment section. I read my comments because it's just me. I don't have a team. It's just me. And this is Young Clarity. And this is the podcast to help you see things a little bit differently. So I hope I helped you see things a little bit differently today. I hope you're going to be a little bit better tomorrow. And I hope I see you again later. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to episode 9 of the Young Clarity podcast. It's been awesome to talk to you guys again. Once again, my name is Titus Rhodes, and this is Young Clarity, a podcast to help you see things a little bit differently. Have a great Monday. Let's grind, people, and progress.